Good afternoon and welcome. I am Carol Browner, the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. And we want to, first of all, thank all of you for joining us today. And then I want to take a moment to introduce a very special person who is with us. Many of you know her. Doris McGuigan has been a longtime activist in her community. She and many of her friends who are with us today, Dolores Barnes and Gloria Seitz, worked together to ensure the reduction of toxic emissions in their neighborhood. These women, joined by other women, by families in this community, took information available to them under the Community Right to Know program and sat down with the industrial facilities in their neighborhood and said, let's work together to reduce toxic chemicals. Let's work together to reduce toxic emissions. And because of their work, since 1986, toxic releases reported by the local chemical companies in this community have declined by 74%. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Doris, the kind of person who helps us do our job to protect the health and environment of the American people. Thank you very much.
Can we pull that thing out there where you can?
You want to stand on the
Thank you. You know, it's really something when the President of the United States pulls a little pad out for you to stand on. You know, things are really great. Thank you, Carol. And I would certainly like to welcome all of you people here. What a beautiful day. Couldn't be any better. And what beautiful people you all are. My name is Doris McGuigan, and it is a great honor today to be here with this wonderful community and all the political leaders who have worked so hard together to protect our environment and our health. I live in the Curtis Bay, Brooklyn, and formerly Brooklyn Park, which is close, area. My husband and I have lived here for over 40 years, and I have raised my two sons here who are with us today. We are surrounded here by chemical factories and a lot of other polluting industries. I mean, you name it, we have it. We live in a zip code that is quite famous in this area because it has one of the highest cancer rates in the country. We know firsthand how dangerous water and air pollution can be to the health of the people in this area. Not too many years ago in our area, if you went outside at night or even during the day, you get this awful smell. I mean, it was really, really bad. And, you know, we used to tell our visitors, they used to come and say, what is this smell? And we'd say, oh, that's only Curtis Bay. Well, things are different. Pollution from the smokestacks at that time settled on our cars, our gardens, our clothes, if you put them in the yard, if you had your windows open, all on your windowsills. So we knew we had to do something. So the first thing that we did is we worked with other leaders in this area to make sure that our environmental laws were strictly enforced. Then we worked at the state and federal level to pass stronger environmental laws, including the Community Right to Know. We were beginning to make some progress. We use community right to know and the federal toxic relief inventory to start working directly with the industries in our area. We started with a dialogue with some of our worst polluters. We set up committees with industry and citizens to work together to reduce the pollution. We asked for and we got an alarm system to warn the community people of a chemical spill. And believe me, that wasn't easy. And we finally began to breathe easier in the Brooklyn-Curtis Bay area. But now the Congress and the Republican leadership is threatening to undermine the productive relationship that we have worked so hard to establish. They want to roll back the 25 years progress we have made in protecting our health and our environment. The House Republican leadership even calls it budget cuts to eliminate part of the environmental laws that protect the health of our children and to make it almost impossible for the environmental agencies to do their job. This is terrible news for us. We need strong environmental laws and good enforcement to protect our families and our children. We need full funding for EPA and the Maryland Department of the Environment. Otherwise, all the work that this community has put in for the last 15, 20 years is going to go right down the tubes. And once again, we're going to be victims of toxic chemical pollution. Most of our Maryland congressional delegation has worked extremely hard to protect these laws. We are most grateful to them, and we applaud their work. But unfortunately, that is not enough. The laws we depend on to protect our health are unraveling in Congress. This is not what America is about. We're scared and we need help. And we know that we can count on President Clinton and Vice President Gore to give us that help. That is why they are here today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure that I introduce you to the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Gore.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great job. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Thank you, Doris. Thank you very much, Doris. What a fighter. And those in the Congress who are trying to repeal the public's right to know may not have really counted on Doris McGuigan. They're not going to even know what hit them. Thank you very much, Doris. And I want to also thank Administrator Carol Browner. And it will be my honor to present the President in just a moment. But on his behalf, I would also like to acknowledge the distinguished guests who are here. I mentioned Doris before, and I want to also say that, as she always does, that she is able to accomplish what she does because she has so many men and women and families in the community helping her, and they're all over. And I'd like to ask those men, women, and children who have worked with Doris in the community groups to please stand, would you? Could you all stand? These are the real workers here. Congratulations to you. Over there. Great. I want to acknowledge Mayor Kurt Schmoke, Mayor, Representative Wayne Gilchrist here, and Lieutenant Governor Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, City Council President Mary Pat Clark, Maryland Secretary of State John Willis, over here, Maryland Attorney General Joe Curran, Maryland Controller Louis Goldstein, Maryland Secretary of the Environment Jane Nishida, Senate President Mike Miller, my longtime friend here, Baltimore Fire Chief Herman Williams, Steelworkers Regional President David Williams. There you go. And many other distinguished guests. Forgive me for leaving some people out. It's not intentional. I mentioned Representative Wayne Gilchrist. I'd like to acknowledge two people who are not here because the Senate is in session and hard at work today. Senator Barbara Mikulski and Senator Paul Sarbanes have been staunch, loyal allies on the environment. And Congressman Wayne Gilchrist's presence here demonstrates that this has been in the past a bipartisan issue. We may be in different parties, but he has stood in the tradition of those Republicans who support protecting the environment. And we appreciate it very much. You know, about 4 months ago, the President and I and some of you gathered on the banks of the Chesapeake Bay for the 25th anniversary of Earth Day. It was a day in which we reflected on 25 years of that bipartisan progress to improve public health and protect our environment. And of course, we must always acknowledge the great progress that has been made. And Doris talked about it earlier, because when people at the grassroots level got the information they needed to speak out and work together effectively, things really did start to change. And there's no better example of that progress than the Chesapeake Bay, where it used to be in very, very bad shape, and now tremendous progress has been made in cleaning it up. But it's one thing to celebrate Earth Day, it's something else to continue fighting the battles that made Earth Day possible and made that progress possible. And we've got a huge battle on our hands right now. Doris McGuigan, along with Dolores Barnes and Gloria Seitz, are examples of citizens who heeded the call to action that Earth Day is all about, and that the environmental citizens movement is all about. Not just on Earth Day, but every single day. In fact, now, when chemical companies, steel companies, or oil companies in this area need to make a decision, on the very top of their to-do list is to make a call to Doris and Dolores and Gloria to make sure that it sits right with their group, Concerned Citizens for a Better Brooklyn. Now, that's a democracy in action, and it's a good thing. The President is going to tell you more about the Community Right to Know Act in a moment. But let me say this. Since 1986, when that law empowered Doris, Dolores, and Gloria, toxic releases reported by local chemical companies that these women have worked with have declined dramatically. She used the figure of 74%. Now, that is a huge accomplishment. And the businesses have become more profitable and more efficient in the process. And it's important to note that, because when you are using raw materials to make pollution and waste it by spreading it on people's houses and yards and children and automobiles, you're wasting money as well as hurting the environment. And the little bit of extra incentive that comes from the community to say, clean that up, we don't want that pollution all over us, translates not only into a cleaner and better community and a better place to live, it also translates into more profitable, more efficient, more productive processes in the companies that are involved. That's just how it works. South Baltimore is certainly a cleaner and healthier place because of the way this whole thing has operated. Unfortunately, however, not everyone is answering that call to action as the citizens of South Baltimore have been answering it. There are some members of Congress who refuse to answer that call. The only call they're answering is the one for the wealthy lobbyists for the biggest polluters in the country. And we're tired of them answering that call. They ought to start responding to the people for a change. You take the majority leader in the Senate and his plan for regulatory reform. That is a plan that actually makes it harder to keep pollution out of communities, to keep bacteria out of our drinking water, and E. coli out of our meat. Why? Because there was a groundswell of concern from American families to say more pollution, more E. coli bacteria, more poisons in the water? Of course not. The American people don't want that. But the big polluters, the ones that want to cut corners and put the responsible business people at a disadvantage, have found a way to get to them. Because this Congress has just decided that our American democracy is up for sale to the highest bidder. And we're saying, no, we'll not stand for it. We won't put up with that. The Republican assault on the environment and public health has been relentless and across the board. They've tried to gut the Clean Water Act, and there's another example of a law protecting the environment that the American people support that was enacted with bipartisan support, Republicans and Democrats and independents all working together. This new bunch came in there, and they invited the lobbyists for the polluters to come right into the halls of Congress, gave them a room in the Capitol, asked them to write the amendments to the law, asked them to then explain the tricky legal language that nobody could understand except these lobbyists and lawyers, and then gave them their marching orders to go out onto the floor of the Congress and vote for weakening the Clean Water Act. It is a disgrace, and it is against what our country stands for. It's against what this citizen group mobilized around. And I'm telling you this, I may not be a very keen political analyst, but I firmly believe they're making an extremely serious mistake. They're listening too much to these polluters, and they're ignoring the groundswell of outrage that's building all across this country in support of clean water, clean air, clean and safe food to eat. And ladies and gentlemen, I think that the work that's been done by folks like those gathered here must continue. And this right to know is the key to it. Because if they succeed in putting a blindfold on you and denying you the truth about what is happening in your community, then their theory is that if they can just smother you in a blanket of ignorance by taking all the knowledge away, taking all the information away, then they'll be able to push you around and keep you under their thumb. Now, we're talking about a balance of power in this country that goes way back to Teddy Roosevelt's time, when our nation decided that the people needed a way to speak through self-government to protect themselves against those who are so wealthy and so powerful that they feel like they have no connection to the community and can just do whatever they want to. That's what this Right to Know Act is all about. For some reason, they want to dismantle the law that has provided citizens like Doris McGuigan and people from communities all across the United States with the tools they need to help make their neighborhoods safer. We believe the solution is pretty simple: a budget that is balanced with an environment that is healthy, common sense reform with laws that accomplish their purpose without unnecessary obstacles and red tape. So when we see responsible citizenship and the kind of involvement that is so evident here in South Baltimore, our country needs to respond. When we see positive and necessary environmental and public health provisions threatened in the name of special interests and lobbyists for polluters, this administration, under the direction of President Clinton, will respond and fight back. And the person that I now have the pleasure to introduce has said that when what he sees as the Polluters Protection Act comes across his desk, he will respond. Now, they may, in the Congress, they may think that they can get by with just answering to the demands of these lobbyists for the polluters. But as I said earlier, they haven't counted on Doris McGuigan. And there's something else that they haven't counted on. Our nation has 3 branches of government. And the executive branch of government has all of its power concentrated in the person of one individual. And the individual who serves as our President of the United States has made it very plain that in this gigantic battle that's now looming between the polluters that have got their hooks in this new Congress and Doris McGuigan, he stands firmly on the side of the people of the United States, on Doris McGuigan's side, and is going to protect our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Oh, great. I love it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give him a hand. Wasn't it a great speech, huh? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please be seated. As you can tell, the Vice President really has no strong convictions about this issue. That's the darndest stump speech I've heard in a long time. I thought for a minute he was a write-in candidate for mayor here. It was a great speech, and thank you for what you said. Thank you, Doris McGuigan, and thank you to all of your allies here for reminding us what's really behind all these issues. One of the biggest problems we have in Washington, even though it's very close to Baltimore, one of the biggest problems we have is having people there remember that the decisions they make there affect how you live here. And then making sure that people who live here understand the impact of the decisions that are made there. You have helped us, every one of you. Doris, for what you've done, and all of you for coming out here today. You have helped us to reestablish that critical link between the American people and their government, so you can decide what you're for and what you're against, and how it's going to affect your children and your future. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, for coming. Thank you, Congressman Gilchrist, for your outstanding support of the environment. And I want to thank all of my friends who are state officials and the city officials, and Senator Miller, thank you for coming. And I want to say a special word of appreciation, too, to the first person who spoke, our EPA Administrator, Carol Browner, who has done a magnificent job in her work. I want to deliver a pretty simple message today. Every office I have ever held of the public trust, from being Attorney General of my state to being governor to being president, required me to swear an oath to protect the people I was elected to serve, to give people the security they need to live up to the most of their God-given potential. Central to that security is the right to know that the air we breathe and the food we eat and the water we drink will be safe, and the right to know if there is any risk to those things. This basic security really is in jeopardy today. There are people who want to strip away decades of public health protections. I intend to fight them every step of the way. As I said, the battle over environmental protection is being fought in Washington, but here in communities like this one, all across America, big and small, you see what is really at stake. Most hardworking families have enough on their minds without having to worry about an environmental hazard in their neighborhood. Most people have enough trouble just trying to educate their kids and pay their bills and keep body and soul together and deal with all the changes in the global economy and how they bear down on community after community and business after business and job after job. Most people have enough to deal with without having to worry about their food, their air, and their water. But at least they have a right to know what is in it and whether something else is about to be put in it. That's what this Community Right to Know Act was all about. You heard the Vice President say it was passed almost a decade ago now, signed by President Reagan, strengthened by President Bush, strongly supported by this administration. This is an issue that's very personal with me. I've dealt with the whole issue of right to know around chemicals for nearly 20 years now, since I was a young Attorney General, and a train loaded with chemicals and car after car blew up in a small southern town in the southern part of my state, where a relative of mine was the sheriff. And it was just a God's miracle that we didn't have hundreds and hundreds of people killed in this little town. And the first thing that occurred to everybody is who knew what about what was on the train, who knew what about how safely it was being carried, who knew what about what kind of precautions should have been taken when the train pulled into the station. That was almost 20 years ago. And I have seen this issue catch on now like wildfire as people in American communities all across our country have demanded the right to have some basic controls over their own lives and their futures. The right to know law now requires manufacturers to tell the public how much they pollute. And if you want to know what's coming out of the smokestacks across the water, for example, all you have to do now is call your local library or the EPA, and the information is there for you. The Community Right to Know Act does not tell companies what they can and can't produce. It doesn't require massive bureaucracy. It doesn't affect every company, just those in certain industries. It's carefully focused on a list of 650 specific dangerous toxins. About 300 of those have been added since this administration came into office, I might add, and over 100 of them are known to cause cancer. This law works, as you have heard. You have had particular success here because you've had such a good grassroots community effort with your 74% reduction. But you need to know that nationwide, every place in the country, since the Community Right to Know Act has been on the books, reported reductions in toxic emissions are about 43% for the whole country. Now that is a law worth passing. No bureaucracy, no new bureaucracy, just power to the people through basic knowledge. This has kept millions of pounds of chemicals out of our lives. It's helped people stay healthy and live longer. And as you have already heard, it's also helped to spur intervention to help businesses work smarter and cleaner and become more profitable, not less profitable. Our environmental act, from our environmental progress, from the Community Right to Know law to the Clean Air Act to so many others, has been a source of bipartisan pride, as has been mentioned. Therefore, it has been something of a surprise to many of us, I think some in the Republican Party, as well as most of us in the Democratic Party, to see what is happening in the Congress now, to see this dramatic departure from the bipartisan efforts of the last 25 years. The House voted to gut environmental and public health protections last week under the pressure of lobbyists for those who have a vested financial interest in seeing that happen. The budget bill they passed would cut environmental enforcement by 50%. It would virtually bring to a halt the federal enforcement of the Clean Water Act and toxic waste cleanups. A terrible mistake. A terrible mistake. In a brazen display of the power of these special interest groups, the House added 18 separate loopholes, giveaways, and stop-in-your-tracks orders, stripping away very specific public safeguards to benefit very specific interest groups. One provision allows oil refineries to spew benzene, a cancer-causing chemical, without stringent safeguards. Another would allow factories to dump 15 million pounds of toxic chemicals into our nation's rivers, lakes, and streams next year alone, 1 year. Another permits cement kilns and other incinerators to burn cancer-causing chemicals without effective control. And the House majority also voted to gut community right to know, literally rolling back protections that are already on the books. And if you ask them why they did this, they say, oh, well, we regret it, but there are all these crazy federal regulators that are bringing to a halt the American economy. The problem is there is no evidence that environmental protection has hurt our economy at all. None. And furthermore, this administration and this EPA administrator have done more than anybody in 25 years to try to streamline regulation, reduce the burden of excessive regulation, get rid of dumb rules that don't make sense. Carol Browner has committed to reduce by 25% the amount of time businesses have to spend filling out forms, but not to destroy the standards, the rules, the regulation, and the community empowerment that are keeping our environment clean. And I am telling you, we can fix bureaucratic problems, but we cannot fix the environmental damage that would be done if they tore up the progress of the last 25 years. You know, if the environmental laws have been so terrible for this country, you tell me how our economy has produced 7 million jobs in the last 2.5 years, 1.5 million new businesses, 2.5 million new homeowners. Why is the stock market at 4,700 if the environment is so bad? We got some problems. We have stagnant middle-class incomes. We got to get more money for people who are out there doing America's work. But the economy is doing well, and the people who own these businesses are doing well, and our country is moving forward in every single measure except raising middle-class incomes. That is the problem, but the environment's not causing that, and there is no evidence for this. This is a big mistake. It is a terrible mistake, and I will not let our country make it. There is no evidence to support it. I think all of you know, and I have already said, that the minute these anti-environmental measures hit my desk, they will be dead. But I intend to do more than that. I want to use the authority of my office to ensure the right of parents to know what chemicals their children are being exposed to. I want more communities to be able to proudly introduce people like Doris and say, we've reduced our chemical emissions by 74%. That's what I want. I want to see more people doing their own work for their own people and their own future. So just before I left for Baltimore, I signed an executive order which says any manufacturer who wants to do business with the federal government must tell its neighbors what dangerous chemicals it puts into the air, the earth, and the water. No disclosure, no contract. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I am directing our agencies to take the next steps, to act quickly and openly to continue to strengthen community right to know. If appropriate, to extend it to more industries and thousands more communities, to require companies to disclose more complete information. Let me say this. There is an orderly process for this now. It is an orderly, open, fair process where we say what we're thinking about doing through the EPA, then all the interest affected, people like you all across America, and the industries too, and the businesses, they get to come in and say what they feel. And if there are mistakes, or if the government's going too far, or if everybody admits something doesn't need to be done, it can all be changed. That is the orderly way this should be done. And that is precisely what Congress, at least some in Congress, are trying to stop us from doing. This orderly, neighborly, open, honest process in which we arrive at these kind of standards. I want to continue to strengthen the right to know through that kind of open and fair process, but I want you to know something else. If Congress passes a law to block this kind of process in future right-to-know issues, then I will issue another executive order to finish that job as well. The message here is clear. Congress can go right on with its plan to undermine America's anti-pollution laws, but it will go nowhere fast. Community right to know is here to stay. I want more neighborhoods like this one all across America. And I want America to see you tonight on the evening news and hear about you tomorrow in the newspapers and on the radio stations so people know what they can do if they work together with the law. Let me just say there is more here than a single law at stake. Democracies always have depended upon the free flow of information to ordinary citizens. Our democracy in this age, which has been heralded the information age, is being regaled constantly with the dreams of all the television channels we're going to be able to get, all the different radio stations, all the different magazines we can read. We're going to be awash in information. Wouldn't it be tragic if in the information age, the single most significant thing to come out of this Congress was blocking information that you need to know about the most basic health and safety requirements of your families, your children, and your community? That's not my idea of the 21st century information society. I want you to know more, not less. And I think you do too. And if you need any evidence of that, just look what happened when the former Soviet Union and the whole communist empire in Eastern Europe broke up. We saw some of the awfulest environmental problems anywhere in the world because there was development there without democracy. Because today's economics took the place of the health and safety of their people, and in the end, helped to undermine their economy. If we needed any other evidence, that alone ought to be enough. So I just want to close by asking you, when you walk away from here, to think about what your ordinary day is like. Think about the information that keeps you and your family safe and healthy. Think about what your child might see that might change his or her behavior. A stop sign, a label that tells you what's in the food you buy for your family. The warning on a pack of cigarettes. This and other things are simple things that we take for granted because their cost is minimal, but their value is priceless. The silent threat posed by pollution is as real and dangerous as the threat of a speeding car to a walking child. We've known for a long time that what we can't see can hurt us. Our health and safety laws, they're our line of defense against these dangers. We're not about to abandon them. Not about to abandon them because of people like you. You know, there's a couple of lines in the Bible that say, if your child asks for bread, would you give him a stone? If he asks for fish, would you give him a serpent? If he asks for an egg, would you give him a scorpion? Today we must ask, if our child asks about the future, will we give him or her dirty air, poisoned water? Would we keep them from knowing what chemicals are being released into their neighborhoods and keep their parents from protecting them? We all know what the answer is. It's no. It seems simple here in this wonderful neighborhood. Why don't you help us make it simple in Washington, D.C.? Thank you very much.
Bob, would you pull 21?
Before it breaks. Just time out. It's going to take me about 2 minutes. Orange and whoever was training Harris. Your new guy Harris was the one that called.
Before he left today, the president asked people here like Doris McQuiggan for their neighborhood support of the environment, and for that he offered an exchange gift. 3, 2, 1. Before he left today, the president asked for neighborhood support of people like Doris McQuiggan, and in exchange for that he offered his support. Carolyn McEnroe of WBAL 11 News.
That's what it is.